Hey guys, Johnny from Ignite here. Thanks for tuning into another video. Today we're going to be looking at the comprehension section, section 1 of the common module, Text and Human Experiences. And we're going to be talking about how to structure, how to think about a 6 to 7 mark question, which you will most likely be confronted with on the day of your HSC exams and even in trials. Okay, so the key point with a 6 to 7 mark question is that the way you structure it, the way you should think about it, is as though it's a mini essay. So you're structuring it like a mini essay. What do we mean by mini essay? Well, an essay has an introduction, it has a body with body paragraphs, and then it has a conclusion. And that's exactly the way I want you to think about answering it, because it'll make things a lot easier for you on the day if you know exactly what should be going where. So with an introduction, the first bit, that only needs to be 1 to 2 sentences. Okay, it doesn't need to be any more than 1 to 2 sentences for a 6 to 7 mark question. This isn't a 20 mark essay like you're doing in other sections of the paper. It's a very short statement that responds, it's a thesis statement if you like, that should be responding directly to the question and actually answering it in conceptual terms. And then in your body paragraphs, you only need to have 2 body paragraphs, which should be filled with evidence that support each point, and they should have 2 ideas in each body paragraph. There should be 2 ideas, and then the conclusion needs to only be 1 sentence as well. So that's the mini essay point. That's the most important point to understand how to think about it. It's not just a matter of writing 1 long paragraph and getting 6 to 7 marks. That would be very hard indeed. You need more structure with this type of response. Okay, so the types of questions you could get for a 6 to 7 marker are twofold. So there's a 1 text question, so a 6 to 7 mark question that only asks about 1 particular text. And then there's a question that will ask you to compare or consider 2 texts that you have been given to read or look at as part of section 1. Irrespective of whatever question you get, this is the general structure, and I've kind of just explained it there. The introduction should be a 1 to 2 sentence thesis. That is a statement that introduces the text and their core perspectives or ideas in relation to the question. You want to use the actual words of the question in this introduction. You want to use the actual words of the question as much as you can throughout the entire mini essay response. When you get down to your 2 body paragraphs, and there should be 2 bodies, you need a topic sentence, and then you need 2 strong pieces of evidence that are then explained in relation to the question. Okay? In terms of the difference between these 2 body paragraphs, it will depend on whether you have been asked about 2 texts or 1 text, but really in either case, you should be exploring a different perspective or a different idea that comes out in either the same text or in each between the 2 texts, and you should be exploring the different idea in each of those body paragraphs. So you don't want to say the same point in the first body paragraph and then the same point in the second and just give different evidence. That's not going to be as strong. In the conclusion, it's a simple 1 sentence link to the question, just an ultimately sentence. We call it an ultimately because you can start the sentence with ultimately, this text does this, and kind of wrap up the mini essay. Okay, so an example of a 1 text question, so a 7 mark question that's only in relation to text 4 in this case, but 1 individual text. Explain how different aspects of the writer's family experience are represented in this extract. So you're going to have to explain how different aspects of a family experience are represented. The way I would think about that, and I think we'll see if we've got a structure here, is to do that introduction, so a 1 to 2 sentence thesis, answering what those kind of generally speaking, the different perspectives are on the family experience. So the different aspects of the family experience are. We want to actually say what those key ones are in the introduction. So be specific straight away and make sure you're using the keywords of the question. After that, I would then be looking at idea 1 in your first body and then idea 2 in your second body. And that's how you split it up. You should split the ideas. With this particular question, it says explain how different aspects of the writer's family experience are represented. Well, I'm going to talk about the key aspect 1 in the first body paragraph, and then I'm going to talk about the second, and it has to be a different key aspect in the second body paragraph. And then we'll do that 1 sentence conclusion. Okay, what about a 2 text question? Compare how text 2 and text 3, so it will mention the two texts, it actually mentions them specifically. Don't expect it to give you a choice and you just pick any two you like. It could just actually tell you exactly what ones it wants you to talk about. I think that's more likely with the way this paper and this new syllabus is going. So compare how the two texts explore inconsistencies within the human experience. Now with a question like that, it's 7 marks and it's a comparison of the two texts. The way I would then structure that, it's very similar. Introduction, very short, 1 to 2 sentences, comparing those two texts and being specific about what they say about inconsistencies within the human experience. And then in body 1, I'm going to talk about my first text, and then in body 2, I'm going to talk about my second text. Now, it could be in the other order. The way I would choose to order it would depend on how my ideas are progressing. I want to talk about the key inconsistency in text 2 in this body, and then I want to talk about the key inconsistency in the other text, text 3 in this body. And it really is just a judgment call on which text should come first in terms of the order. Don't think it's just because text 2, because 2 is a lesser number than 3, that comes first. If it makes more sense in terms of your argument and progressing your argument to do it the other way around, then you should do that. But ultimately here, we're talking about the inconsistencies of the human experience, and you want to talk about an inconsistency in this text, which is key, and then give 2 pieces of evidence and explain them. And then you want to give an inconsistency in text 3. You could also talk about within these bodies, or mainly in the second body after you've already established the first text, inconsistencies between the two texts and what they say about the human experience. So if you have a question that says, talk about inconsistencies, you actually want to talk about how the texts in themselves might clash with one another. And I would recommend doing that in the second body after you've already established the perspective of the first body. Okay, so here are the sentence starters. We'll finish with this because it's hard to do a full unpacked example, although I'm sure we will do that in other videos. And I think there's already one out there if you look for it. But our sentence starters here is with a comparison question. I'll be focusing on that. Whereas forces you to compare. It's a great word because it forces you to do what you should be doing. Whereas text 2 explores, and then say what that explores in relation to the question. We've got to see the actual words of the question in that introduction. Text 3 considers, and then now show a different perspective or show another inconsistency in this case with the example. Okay, but you've got to use the key terms of the question and you've actually got to say what those inconsistencies are in this case. So don't just keep it all very general. That's not going to be a sophisticated argument. You need to be specific and tell us what the key points are in each one from the get-go. From your first sentence, I need to see specifically what the key perspectives are, and they need to go beyond the question, as in you need to be actually answering the question straight away, specifically. Don't be general. That's not going to be awarded the same amount of marks as an essay that is nice and specific and concise in what it's talking about. Okay, when you get to the bodies, I like these starts. So in your first body paragraph, if you want to memorize some sentence starters, primarily is a good one. So just like firstly or mainly, right? Primarily, comma, and we'll talk about this in a second, ignore the brackets. Primarily in text 2 or 3, whichever one you begin with, the composer illustrates and then say what the key concept or the key inconsistency is in that text. Then in the next sentence, go specifically and now bring in your evidence. So I like just specifically because it's like, I'm now going to give you an example. So now bring in the evidence, a technique, and then the quote, and then talk about its effect in relation to the key terms of the question. And use the key terms of the question where possible. And try and make an effort to do that. Moreover is a good third sentence here. The composer suggests that, and now that's just a different way of structuring the sentence. You don't have to follow that exactly, but you can start by saying the effect and then actually say the evidence that supports that effect. Okay, and that should be in relation to the question as well. So if you do 3 strong sentences there, a topic sentence and 2 bits of evidence that are explained in relation to the question, then that's great. In the next body paragraph, body 2, you can then use a term like comparatively or contrastingly and go and compare the second text to the first by looking at a new aspect or a different aspect, and you'll repeat the exact same process there. Okay, lastly, with the conclusion, I like starting with ultimately. Then it can say, whilst each text, and they're the bits that you can just memorize, presents a unique perspective on, you can even learn that, and then actually say what they're different on, where do they differ. You can say they both suggest, and then actually bring in how they're common, bring in a commonality. So that's a nice sentence structure there. It's one sentence, and it will help you get the 6 or 7 out of 6 or 7, whatever it is, to get you the full marks. in a nice structured way. So the last point on this whole thing, and students often ask this, if I've already had a question on like text 2, for instance, if I've already been asked a 3 or 4 marker on text 2, and then I get asked a 6 or 7 marker with text 2 in it, can I reuse the evidence? And the answer is yes, you can, but you have to make sure that if you're going to reuse evidence from other answers that you've done, that you might have the same technique, but you need to re-explain it through the lens of the new question. So you need to be linking the effect of those pieces of evidence to the new question. And as long as you do that, I think it's okay to recycle the evidence, at least from these texts. Although if you can, try and use maybe one new piece of evidence from each text, and you can recycle another, and just make sure that they're both explained in relation to the new question, not the old question, and I think you'll be fine. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe this video if you found it of some value. If you've got any questions, please comment below. If there's anything you want a video on in the near future, please chuck it in the comments as well. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do like the content, subscribe to our channel and we'll have more videos coming your way.
That's right, guys. Thanks for watching. And please make sure you check out our online resource database. We've had a team of state rank achievers and heads of English put these together for you, covering everything from essay structures and examples all the way through to craft of writing and comprehension skills. So check them out at ignitehse.com.au, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.